Police knocked on my door during my wedding because my wife's ex sent them proof she was already married. I was standing there in my pristine wedding suit, surrounded by the clinking of champagne glasses and the murmur of well-wishing guests, when I noticed two police officers making their way through the crowd. It was as if they parted the sea of smiling faces, heading straight toward me and my bride. My heart tightened. I had no clue what they wanted, but I sensed, deep in my gut, that nothing good ever came of uniformed officers appearing on your wedding day. My wife, well, the woman I believed was soon to be my legal wife, held onto my arm with trembling fingers. She had been smiling all morning, albeit a little anxiously, but the moment she spotted the officers, her expression collapsed into pure dread. One of them lifted a hand in our direction, asking quietly if he could speak to my bride. A hush fell over the reception, and I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath. Someone somewhere dropped a glass. The tension around us felt like a storm cloud seconds before a downpour. Even then, I told myself it might be a minor misunderstanding, some bizarre accident. I had absolutely no idea that this confrontation would unravel a hidden chapter of my bride's past, a past that would threaten to destroy not just the ceremony, but our entire relationship. It's surreal to think back on all of it now, to recall how we'd gotten there. If you had told me 6 months ago that the happiest day of my life would be derailed by accusations of bigamy, I would have laughed, but that laugh would have been rooted in ignorance. Let me explain how it all began. I first met Anna, my gorgeous, shy, and seemingly straightforward partner, a little over 2 years ago. We'd both grown up in the same part of town, but had never crossed paths until mutual friends introduced us at a casual coffee gathering. Right away, I was drawn to the way she listened intently, as though everything I said mattered. She had a softness to her, a warmth in her eyes, and yet there was a flicker of caution too, as if she'd seen more hardship than she cared to admit. We started talking about work, life, simple things, and despite having known her for maybe 10 minutes, I felt an unexplainable closeness, that cliché click that people talk about. We exchanged numbers at the end of that coffee meetup, and I drove home thinking I had stumbled upon someone truly special. Over the next few weeks, we grew closer. Coffee dates turned into dinner dates turned into late-night phone calls, until we were meeting almost daily. Anna was attentive and sweet, yet I sensed something lingering beneath her calm demeanor. Sometimes her phone would ring, and she'd glance at it, her face turning pale before she switched it to silent. She confessed that she had recently left a difficult marriage. I tried not to pry, figuring she would tell me what I needed to know in her own time. She seemed so relieved to have a chance at happiness that I didn't want to dig into the pain she had endured. All I knew was that her ex-husband was named Ostap, and he was toxic, in her words. She insisted it was over, that they had separated and were in the process of finalizing a divorce. Something about the word process should have rung alarm bells, but in my naive optimism, I barely registered it. Time passed, and our relationship blossomed. My parents adored her, especially my mother, who insisted Anna join every family gathering. Even though Anna would occasionally withdraw when certain topics came up, particularly anything about her past, everyone assumed she was just private. I was so smitten that I overlooked those concerns. When I proposed to her about a year after we met, it felt like the most natural next step. Anna cried with happiness, hugging me so tightly I thought I would burst. She said yes, and those tears of joy dispelled any lingering anxieties I might have had about her old life. It wasn't that I didn't want to know more. It was that I trusted her to tell me if it mattered. From there, wedding preparations kicked into high gear. We looked at venues, tasted cakes, sent out invitations. Family members and close friends were thrilled. Everyone talked about how perfect we were together. In hindsight, there had been a couple of small red flags, paperwork issues when we went to file some documents for the marriage license. Anna had hesitated oddly, saying she'd forgotten a key piece of ID at home. She asked if we could come back another day. The clerk behind the counter seemed annoyed but shrugged it off. I teased her for her forgetfulness, but she looked so genuinely rattled by the slip-up that I dropped the subject. We ended up sorting it out the next time we went, but my mind now wanders back to that day and wonders if it was a sign of something bigger. As our wedding approached, Anna's nerves intensified. She was often on edge, and a couple of weeks before the ceremony, I heard her phone ring at midnight. She glanced at the screen, went pale, and switched it off. When I asked who it was, she shrugged and mumbled, "Wrong number, probably." She tried to reassure me with a weak smile. One time I heard her behind the bathroom door, speaking in hushed, urgent tones, saying, "You can't do this. It's finished." She came out looking shaken, and I knew in that moment her past was coming back to haunt her. But I let it slide. I was excited about our life together, about the future, the family we'd build. I persuaded myself that maybe her ex was just being a jerk, trying to rile her up. She insisted it was nothing. "Don't worry," she kept saying, her eyes shining with fear. "He can't ruin this for us." I believed her. I suppose I wanted to believe that nothing could stand in the way of our happiness. Then came the morning of the wedding. My best friend and groomsman, Nick, was helping me get ready. The atmosphere in the house was half chaotic, half elated. My mother was scurrying around, making sure the flowers would arrive on time, that the cars were decorated. Everyone was so joyous. Except Anna seemed distant. She was polite with my family, took pictures with my cousins who'd shown up early, but I saw her checking her phone every 15 minutes with a worried frown. I asked her if everything was okay, and she told me not to worry. She was just anxious. I tried my best to soothe her. After all, weddings can be stressful. You want everything to be perfect. Arriving at the venue was like stepping into a fairy tale. Twinkle lights draped across tall trees, a small garden arch covered in blossoms, tables set with elegant decorations. Our guests started filling in, smiling, hugging, congratulating. The band tuned their instruments, playing soft music that drifted through the spring air. I stole a glance at Anna before the ceremony began. She was breathtaking in her lace gown, though there was a tremor in her hands that she tried to hide by gripping her bouquet. I remember thinking, she's nervous. But after we say our vows, all that stress will melt away. How foolish I was to imagine everything would go smoothly. The ceremony kicked off beautifully. My father walked me down the aisle, and then Anna came in, her eyes shining with tears as she met mine. We exchanged vows that we had written ourselves. Mine were filled with gratitude and love, referencing all the ways she had brought light into my life. Hers were heartfelt but laced with an undertone of sorrow, as though she was promising me everything in spite of something dark behind her. It was incredibly moving in the moment, though I couldn't quite put my finger on why she sounded almost apologetic. The guests clapped, the music played, and for a brief moment I felt absolute bliss. Right after the ring exchange, we moved to the reception area. Everyone was chatting, sipping champagne, the usual joyful chaos. I was in the middle of raising a toast, looking at Anna with pure affection, when someone tapped my shoulder. I turned around, and there they were. Two uniformed officers, serious-faced, scanning the room. They asked me if Anna was present and requested to speak to her immediately. My stomach dropped. People around us started whispering. Nick tried to step in, asking if this could wait, but the taller officer informed us it was a matter of legal urgency. Anna came over, trembling, her bouquet still clutched in one hand. She looked like she might faint. The officer said something about a complaint filed against her, possibly relating to a currently valid marriage. The words bigamy and investigation were tossed out. My mother gasped, and I heard the hush spread as if a giant wave had just crashed down upon the entire event. The next minutes were a blur. The police explained that Anna's ex-husband, Ostap, had reached out to them with documents suggesting that Anna was still his wife under the law. Their divorce, apparently, had never been finalized. He'd produced a marriage certificate and evidence that no legitimate decree of divorce was ever processed. Anna was breathless, shaking her head, insisting it wasn't true, that the divorce had been handled and that this was just a malicious trick. But the police had to follow up. According to them, if the complaint stood, Anna could be facing charges that would void our marriage entirely. I was too stunned to speak. In the matter of a few minutes, my entire world had shifted. Guests started muttering, some offered to help, others backed away as though we were a car crash they couldn't stop staring at. My father approached the officers calmly, asking if there was a warrant or something official. They had paperwork, a formal request to bring Anna in for questioning. It wasn't an arrest at that point, but it was serious enough. The policeman said we could follow them to the station, or she could come voluntarily the next day. But either way, a statement had to be made. Anna crumpled, tears streaming down her face, and I was left blinking in disbelief, the ring still warm on my finger. Within the hour, our wedding reception was in ruins. The guests milled around, some left, uncertain how to handle such a scandal. My mother was crying, furious that our once-in-a-lifetime celebration had come crashing down. My father put his arms around her, trying to get everyone else to calm down. And I was in shock, still wearing that formal suit that was supposed to symbolize the happiest day of my life. Anna and I ended up sitting in a small side room of the venue, away from prying eyes, while the officers waited in the lobby for her decision. That's when I finally asked, "Anna, what is going on? Did you lie to me?" She broke into sobs, burying her face in her hands. All she could manage to say was how sorry she was, that she never meant for this to happen, that she believed the divorce had gone through. In between her sobs, she explained that Ostap had made things as difficult as possible. He had withheld documents, threatened her, insisted that if she tried to finalize everything, he would ruin her life. He had always been controlling, she said, and their separation was messy, but she was under the impression it was legally recognized. My heart twisted. I wanted to be furious, but she looked so shattered that I couldn't summon pure anger. Instead, I felt betrayed and lost. The woman I loved with all my being stood before me, confessing she might still be legally tied to another man. I thought of the hush phone calls, the trembling at every unknown text, and realized they weren't just the normal anxieties of dealing with an ex. They were signs of something deeper, something that might have needed my attention months ago. The next day, with the ashes of our failed wedding lying around us, we went to the police station. Anna gave a statement, providing everything she had. Receipts for the separation, a letter from a lawyer claiming that they'd filed paperwork months ago. Yet the official records were inconclusive. Some part of the process had apparently never been completed. Maybe Ostap never signed a document he was supposed to sign, or maybe the divorce decree was stuck in a bureaucratic backlog. Either way, the system had no record of a final divorce. The police took her side of the story and told us the matter would be investigated. They didn't arrest her that day, but the possibility remained that she could be charged if it turned out she had knowingly committed bigamy. Over the next week, my life descended into a nightmare. Relatives called me, uncertain how to address the fiasco. Social media posts by some wedding guests started circulating, mentioning that the police had shown up during the ceremony. Everyone wanted an explanation. Did you know she was still married? Is she a scammer? How could you not see the red flags? My mother kept breaking down in tears, telling me she felt humiliated, telling me I deserved better. My father tried to be pragmatic. He offered to hire a lawyer. My best friend Nick was outraged on my behalf, demanding that I confront Anna and kick her to the curb, but I still loved her, and I was numb. I couldn't just erase my feelings overnight, so I begged Anna to be completely honest with me, to tell me every single detail about Ostap, about their relationship, about what went wrong with the paperwork. She broke down one evening in my tiny living room, telling me the whole story in a trembling voice. Ostap, she said, had been charming at first. They married young, and she had no idea he would become abusive. Over time, she discovered he lied about finances, threatened her if she ever tried to leave, and used a million tiny manipulations to keep her under his control. She tried to divorce him once, but he refused to sign any documents unless she paid him a ridiculous sum. Later, she managed to leave him physically by moving to a friend's place. She said she thought her lawyer had submitted the official divorce petition. She had even seen some initial confirmation that the case was opened. But apparently, the final step was never completed. Maybe Ostap bribed someone or simply withheld his own signature in a part of the process. Anna, desperate to move on, took it at face value that the divorce was done. She admitted she had been negligent in not confirming it absolutely, but she was terrified. He had threatened her, saying that if she tried to finalize everything behind his back, he would track her down, humiliate her, and ruin her future. She never told me the full extent of these threats because she didn't want to involve me in her nightmare. I sat there quietly, absorbing it all, a swirl of emotions. Sympathy, betrayal, heartbreak overcame me. She told me if I wanted to walk away, she would understand. She didn't want to destroy my life. When I looked into her tearful face, I realized that for as much as I felt deceived, I also felt a powerful need to protect her. I couldn't just dismiss her as a liar. She might have made mistakes, but she wasn't malicious. She was stuck in the snare of a controlling, vengeful ex-husband. I decided to stand by her. Maybe that was foolish, or maybe it was love. I consulted a lawyer myself, determined to see if we could fix this. The lawyer told me that if the divorce truly wasn't finalized, our wedding was legally invalid for now. We could do it again properly once she was free. But first, we had to settle the matter of the bigamy claim. If Ostap pushed it, Anna could be in serious legal trouble. Unless, of course, we could prove she made every reasonable effort to get divorced. That's when we discovered that many of her original documents, the petition, the hearing dates, were missing. It felt suspicious. Anna tried contacting the lawyer who had handled her separation, but apparently that individual had retired or moved offices, leaving the entire situation in limbo. A new attorney took on her case, but the time and cost were daunting. Meanwhile, Ostap was enjoying every moment, apparently calling Anna's phone from hidden numbers to gloat. One day I picked up the phone for her, and a voice on the other end sneered, "You can't fix this. I'll make sure everyone knows what she did." Then he hung up. I confronted him in person once. Nick found out where Ostap lived. It was risky, but I was boiling with anger. I stood at Ostap's doorstep, demanded to know why he was trying to destroy our lives. He answered with a sarcastic grin. "Anna belongs to me on paper. She can't just skip off into the sunset with you." I warned her. I nearly punched him right there. My fists clenched, and Nick had to restrain me. Ostap laughed, telling me that if we gave him money, maybe he'd withdraw the complaint and sign the divorce papers. Blackmail, pure and simple. His greed and malice were staggering. When I told him we wouldn't give him a penny, he stepped closer, voice dripping with venom. Then watch what happens. The following weeks tested our resilience. Anna cried a lot, feeling guilty that my entire family was dragged into this humiliation. Some of my relatives suggested I call off any relationship with her, find someone without such baggage. but my heart wouldn't let me. I saw Anna not as a criminal or a deceiver, but as a scared person cornered by an ex-husband who exploited her vulnerabilities. We started gathering any shred of evidence that could help prove she had tried to finalize her divorce. Old emails between her and the original lawyer, text messages in which she told Ostap she was done, bank statements showing that she had paid some legal fees. The new attorney believed we had a decent argument. Meanwhile, the police matter was still pending. They told us they needed to see these documents. If Anna could show genuine attempts to finalize the divorce, that would lessen the suspicion of intentional bigamy. Yet the looming possibility of charges kept us on edge. My mother tried to make sense of it, eventually coming around when she saw how tormented Anna was. She realized Anna wasn't intentionally betraying me. She was a victim of this manipulative ex. My father and I spent evenings calling every connection we had, trying to expedite the process. We discovered that, legally, Anna's marriage to Ostap might still be recognized on paper if the judge never stamped the final decree. But we also found out that Anna had a hearing scheduled a year ago, which was canceled last minute due to a supposed administrative glitch. She was never informed of the cancellation. By the time a new date was set, the lawyer had apparently dropped her case, and no one bothered to inform her. It was a perfect storm of incompetent bureaucracy and Ostap's sabotage. Slowly, piece by piece, we built a timeline that showed Anna believed she was divorced, but had effectively been left in limbo by a cluster of errors and intimidation. One key moment came when Anna's friend Oksana produced a letter that Anna had written a few months after leaving Ostap. In it, Anna expressed relief that her lawyer had submitted the final round of paperwork. She wrote something like, "I can't wait to move on and never have to see his name again." The date was clearly prior to when we started dating. This supported the idea that she'd acted in good faith. Oksana also recalled that at one point, Ostap hinted he had ways to block the divorce. Between that letter and Oksana's statements, our attorney felt confident we could challenge Ostap's claims. Finally, after weeks of stress, a formal hearing was called to address the divorce once and for all, and possibly the bigamy accusations. Ostap was summoned, and Anna was told to bring all her evidence. I went with her, a swirl of nerves in my stomach, but also a protective determination. We sat in a sterile room with white walls, fluorescent lighting humming overhead. Ostap arrived late, acting as though he owned the place. He brought his own lawyer, who tried to paint Anna as a duplicitous woman who knowingly planned a second wedding. But the judge was less interested in the theatrics and more in the hard facts. Anna's new attorney calmly laid out the documentation. The judge's expression shifted as he saw how every step of Anna's attempt to divorce Ostap had been thwarted. Emails, receipts, canceled hearing notices, the letter from Oksana. It was all placed before him. Ostap tried to interrupt, claiming Anna was lying, but the judge silenced him, reminding him that the evidence was quite clear. Anna had initiated the process and acted in good faith. The final decree had been lost or never formally signed due to mishandling, and Ostap had done nothing but obstruct. Within an hour, the judge made it plain that Ostap's claims of bigamy were on shaky ground, because you can't intentionally commit bigamy if you firmly believe your first marriage is dissolved. The judge ordered the divorce finalized immediately, citing Anna's right to move on. Ostap fumed, shooting us hateful glares, but he had no further recourse. When we walked out of that building, Anna gripped my hand tightly, tears streaming down her face. But this time, they were tears of relief. I felt exhausted yet lighter than I had in weeks. Legally, she was no longer attached to him. The police dropped any interest in investigating her for bigamy since the court's findings showed she hadn't acted knowingly. Ostap tried one last desperate threat, some nonsense about taking revenge, but it fell flat now that the law was no longer on his side. I stared him down, every fiber in my body wanting to see him punished for all the torment he'd caused. Our lawyer hinted that we could pursue charges against him for harassment or even blackmail, but Anna was so exhausted she just wanted to be free. Maybe later we'd reconsider. We went back home, and that night, in my living room, we sat in silence for a long while. So much damage had been done, not just to our wedding day, but to our emotions. The trust between us had been shaken. Anna apologized for not telling me more about the incomplete divorce. She was terrified I'd leave her, or that Ostap would find some new way to break her if I got involved. I told her with a weariness in my voice that we'd have to rebuild our relationship on honesty from here on out. No more secrets. She clung to me as if I was the only safe harbor she had left, and I realized that for all the anger and betrayal I felt, I couldn't shut her out. I loved her, and I saw how cruelly she'd been treated in her past. If I truly wanted a life with her, I had to accept the flaws in her story. We decided to slowly work our way back to normalcy. Of course, normalcy doesn't return overnight. My family was still upset about the spectacle at the wedding. A lot of money had gone into that day, and we never had the ceremony we dreamed of. People gossiped. Some of our acquaintances called Anna the bride with two husbands, reveling in the drama. But in the weeks that followed, as the truth came out, many also realized that she'd been a victim of a monstrous ex. My mother eventually softened toward her again, especially after seeing how diligently Anna tried to make amends. My father, always the practical one, just said, "Let's focus on the future. If you love each other, you'll get through this." About 2 months later, we decided to have a small gathering, much smaller than our original wedding. We didn't want the hype or the big venue. This time, we insisted on verifying every piece of paperwork twice. We got a new marriage license, well documented. Our families gathered in a little garden behind my parents' house, with just a few close friends. Anna wore a simple white dress, looking radiant and relieved. I wore a suit that wasn't nearly as elaborate as the first one, but it felt more personal this way. Under the warm afternoon sun, we exchanged vows again, a second chance to say what we meant without fear or secrets looming over us. I could see her hands shaking, but this time it was from joy, not dread. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, my heart pounded with a mixture of triumph and humility. We had fought so hard to be here. That evening, as we sipped a modest toast with our loved ones, I couldn't help but reflect on how easy it is to judge someone from the outside. People might say, "How could you not know she was still married?" Or, "Why didn't she just finalize the divorce?" But the reality is rarely that simple. Fear, manipulation, bureaucratic errors, all can combine into a terrifying storm that blinds and paralyzes a person. Anna was brave enough to leave a toxic relationship, but her ex refused to let her go quietly. He used the system and her own terror against her. And in that process, our wedding day became collateral damage. Looking back, I won't pretend it was easy to forgive. I won't say I'm fully over the sense of betrayal I felt. But when someone you love is in pain, and when you see how regretful they are for the harm they caused, unintentional though it may have been, you either choose to stand by them or walk away. I chose to stand by Anna, and I'd do it again. She has taught me that real love isn't just about the smooth ride. It's about staring adversity in the face and refusing to let it destroy what you've built together. And so here we are, married for real, forging ahead. Our story began with an unthinkable wedding fiasco that nearly chased away everyone we cared about. But it ended with a small, intimate ceremony in my parents' backyard. No big frills, no fancy decorations, but it was genuine, and no one came knocking on the door with accusations. I suppose that's the best we could have asked for, a second chance to say, "I do," in peace, knowing that this time there were no hidden shadows lurking behind the scenes. Sometimes I still think about the moment I first spotted those police officers, weaving between my wedding guests, and how a bottomless pit opened in my stomach. It was the last thing I ever expected. If I had to give anyone advice from all this, I'd say, be very certain that your partner's past is truly behind them, especially when it involves legal matters. Talk, ask questions, verify when needed. Loving someone is one thing, but marriage is also a legal commitment. Still, love isn't about giving up when it gets hard. If your partner genuinely wants to fix things, if they're honest despite their fears, you might find the strength to keep going. Anna and I found ours. Even if we had to be tested on what should have been the happiest day of our lives, that day was a nightmare. But ironically, it paved the way for a deeper bond. We learned that we could face humiliation, heartbreak, and a vindictive ex-husband, and still find each other's hands in the aftermath. And that, I believe, is worth more than any flawless ceremony could ever be.